tutorial session, but I thought we haven't discussed your doubts related to affine invariant estimation. So it would be appropriate if I first discuss your doubts related to affine invariant estimation, and then we can have a tutorial sometime next week, possibly Tuesday or maybe even Wednesday. That's okay. Yeah. So any doubts you have on invariant estimation? First of all, any issues with the quiz? You all were satisfied with the quiz, with your performance, and yeah? Were all you satisfied with the fairness of the examination?
Yes, sir.
Or do you feel that it was? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, good. So none of you used unfair means to secure well in the exam. I hope so. Because I'll apply my consistency test based on my experience, and I'll try to see, make sure that all of you have done it independently without taking each other's help. Now, if I have a suspicion, those cases I may have to, I'll have to go for a scrutiny and then possibly oral examination or whatever. So all of you did it in a fair way, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So no
Sir, I
issues
think
with
Souvik is in the waiting list.
Souvik is not Shreya, I see is in a waiting list. She is in, no? Yeah. So that's okay. So the quiz was fine, right? Do you want to give any feedback regarding fairness or overall? I will try to implement next time, but your feedback, as I have been telling, that your feedback is very important to improve this online, because this is a learning experience for me as well. I'm trying my best to make it as good as your regular semester. But still, being a human being, I'm prone to errors or to misjudgments. So that's a reason why I need your feedback. If you want to give any feedback, try to give it regarding quiz or overall delivery of the course.
Sir, I think if you gave all the question at a time, and then means it is possible that you gave all the question at a time, means every time I have to scan my answer and uploaded it. So I think means if it is possible.
And everything is possible. You see, there is a purpose to do it. Because online there is no proctoring taking place, right? If the whole exam is going on, the trust between the two parties, the teacher and the students. So I can have a trust in you, but my whole examination should look fair to outside world also. If I tell them that, look, this is the way I conducted examination. Now, if you release all the questions at a time, there is a more chance of playing around with those questions. Because now you have 3 questions at a time. You can distribute questions between yourself. You start number 1, somebody else start number 2, and somebody else start number 3. So this is just to have some amount of, because these are the typical questions which would be asked. You see, when I am being interviewed as a teacher, people ask me these questions. How did you ensure this? How did you ensure this? Because these are the issues people are worried. But uploading scanned pages should not be a problem at your age, right? With these 3 times, is it that much a problem? Is it changing your life, or does it really spoil your whole day?
No, sir.
If it
Don't
spoils your whole day,
spoil.
then it is, or if it is unfair to you. It is
No.
convenient to you, that I understand, but even writing an exam is not convenient. No? It would have been nice if I would have given you grades without writing examination. So this is, if it would have helped in some way, I would have released all of this. This has been done purposefully just to make examination fair and to look it fair to the outside world, that it is, at least from my side, I'm trying that it is, there is some amount of fairness in the examination. So try to, so this itself is a learning experience for you. Try to find out ways how to efficiently upload your answers within 20 minutes, after 20 minutes, every 20 minutes. So there are, means I don't know, possibly if you give it to me, I may take more time than you, because I understand first you have to convert into one of those formats. It may not be in the PDF format. Then somehow you have to go for an app which converts it into a PDF format. And then you have to do it. So I understand, but that I think you should enjoy, right? That itself is a learning experience. So that I'm sorry that I'll not be able to do. But any other suggestions? That is being, because that is being done knowingly and purposefully. That is a part of whole protocol which is being followed.
Hello, sir. This is Deepak.
Yeah.
So I was saying, like, at the time you are giving for uploading the answer sheets. So if you can increase it, like if you are giving us 5 minutes,
Right.
instead of 5 minutes, if you're increasing the time to the next questions, half time of the next question, if it is possible.
So no,
Then-
that is possible. What you're saying, time is less, 5 minutes is less. That is what you're saying.
Yeah, something like last time when I was uploading, it was getting like I finished it at the borderline. So at the time it was kind of quick. Things have to be done quite.
I can increase it to 10 minutes. Would
Yeah,
that
then it's
10 minutes would be fine?
yeah.
Yeah. But then the next question, which the next part which I release would be just 5 minutes before the last slot, right? So for example, this time, so for example, if it NSEM is 3 hours exam and it starts at 9, I can make it 9 to 9:50, right? And 9:50 to 10 or 9:50 to 9:59 could be your uploading, right? But part B can be released at 9:55. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So that's okay. So that next time when I take the midsem or the quiz, I'll give you.
Sir,
Yeah,
Joydeep,
thank you.
Yeah.
Joydeep is in waiting room. Is like
What?
Joydeep in his waiting room.
Oh, right. Yeah, 2 people are waiting. Yeah. Good. So what do they give you a call, or they inform you through call that I'm in the waiting room? Tell the instructor that, yeah. How do you know, or you just keep on having a watch who is coming and who is not going?
So they are messaging on the group.
Messaging on WhatsApp group.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. So you have a whole class WhatsApp group, right? Good. Yeah. So any other suggestions? So this I will incorporate. I can increase this minute to 9 minutes, 9:50 to 9:59, and then yeah. Any other issue? So I have uploaded the solutions of quiz 1. It's in the resource section. You can see the solutions, and if you find any discrepancy in the solution, you can get in touch with me and point it out. So, okay, so then if there are no suggestions, then we can move further. So one, I got one suggestion, which is about increasing the time for uploading. That would be taken care of in the next one. The second one, I will not be in a position to take it because that is a well thought out strategy that will not release all the questions in one go. But to some extent, I think your suggestion is also taken care of, because now there is a more time to upload it, right? There will be more time to upload it, 9 minutes rather than 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So any doubts in the affine invariant estimation or any other? Yeah.
Sir, a question. I was thinking that while we were judging shy of you, it is basically that while looking for the risk, there are two expectations. Then there is the W.
Right.
Now, while we were now shy of you is just excluding the exterior expectation, the middle part.
Right.
Now my question is, when we were defining W, it is said to be convex or even such defining features are given. Now my question is, does the expectation of a convex function also imply to be a convex? Means after integration or summation, does it always turn out to be a convex?
No, you see, so my advice on that would be whenever you are posing a question, you should be clear about what the question is, right? So for example, let us look at your question. I can interpret in one way to interpret your question is W is convex, X
Yes,
is a
sir.
variable, then whether expected value of WX is convex. Now that question,
Yes, sir.
that question is meaningless. Why? Because when you are just taking expected value of WX, this random variable would be integrated out. It's along with its PDF. It would be integral WX fx dx. So it would be just some constant, right? It would be just constant. So this that way it doesn't make sense. But now let us say my function W is a function of two variables, A and X. So W of A comma X, right? Now what I say is this is convex in A for every fixed X, right? This is
Yes,
convex in X for every fixed A. So it is a function of two variables, but convexity is there in one variable, which is the first. So it is convex in A for every fixed X. Now if I take expected value of W A comma X, X would be integrated out. It would still be a function of A. Right?
Yes, sir.
A has not been integrated out. Now the question one can ask whether this expectation would be a convex function of A or not, right?
Yes, sir.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
that is what your question is, right?
Yes, sir.
So if W is a function of two variables, A and X, WAX is convex as a function of A when you keep X as fixed. At whatever level you fix X, that is immaterial. But whatever X is, WAX is convex in A, then expected value of WAX is convex in A. A simple proof, which is not very rigorous, but I can tell you. So let us look at what is the expected value of WAX. Integral over WAX fx dx.
Yes, sir.
In the case of discrete, it would be summation. So suppose W was a very nice function.
Okay, sir.
Differentiable twice and everything, right? Then to show that this integral with WAX fx dx is convex, I have to show that double derivative of this function with respect to A is positive. I take the double derivative d square A by d square A integral over WAX fx dx. Right? Now, question is, can I take the derivative, this double derivative inside?
Yes, sir.
So this is a typical problem which you face in mathematics, a lot of statistics courses. If there is a limit and there is an integral sitting, can I take the limit inside?
Yes.
There is a derivative which is sitting outside, but between it and the function there is an integral. Can I take the derivative outside? So one normally needs very rigorous argument to justify it. You might have done those dominated convergence theorem, bounded convergence theorem, and all that. But normally, your function would be nice, right? Here it is complex, differentiability, everything is there. So in normal courses, you'll be in a position to take it inside it, right? It's only in a rare situations, very typical kind of examples where. So suppose I can take the derivative inside. I take the derivative inside, it becomes double derivative of WAX with respect to A. W was convex with respect to A. So this double derivative would be greater than or equal to 0 for every fixed and for every A. Now integrand is non-negative, so integral would also be non-negative.
Yes, yes.
For every X. So because fx is greater than or equal to 0 for every X, because it was for every X convex, it is greater than or equal to 0. So integral is also non-negative. So this is just by observation you can do it. Only thing you have to justify it, you can take the derivative, double derivative inside the integral.
Inside.
You can see whether you can apply bounded convergence theorem, dominated convergence theorem or not.
Okay, sir.
Other thing is you just apply definition. To show that suppose psi of A was integral WAX fx dx, right? Psi A, because it is a function of A when you have taken the integral. You have to show that psi A is convex. Psi A is convex, that means psi of alpha A plus 1 minus alpha B is less than or equal to alpha times psi A plus 1 minus alpha times psi B. So I look at what is the psi of alpha a plus 1 minus alpha b. This is integral of w of alpha a plus 1 minus alpha b, comma x, fx dx.
Yes, sir.
But w is convex in a. W of alpha a plus 1 minus alpha b x will be less than or equal to alpha times w a plus 1 minus alpha times w b x. You apply that. And you know,
Yes.
if f1x is less than or equal to f2x, then integral over f1x is less than or equal to integral over f2x. Apply that, and just by definition, here you don't need any assumption that you can take the derivative inside. It just follows from the definition.
Definition. Yes.
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 Is that clear? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Any other doubt?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, from the last video lecture in which you have given us an example of uniform nu minus sigma by 2 comma nu minus sigma nu plus sigma by 2. Sir, what is g theta x?
G theta x, it was in what context I had derived? I don't know. Can you do you have a note? Because lecture I don't have.
For estimation of mu, I think.
But sir, why?
Yeah.
Sir, you are considering g theta x is a joint. I don't know, sir, what it is.
Joint
Really. Sir, from the last video lecture.
last, so I'll have to play the video lecture, right?
Oh, you don't have your notes.
Just see if I can. Can you tell at what second it is? What minute?
Sir, from the starting, where you taking the joint distribution function is equal to
Okay, let me see if I can.
g theta x, sir.
Let me see. Yeah,
Fine value estimated of sigma. And so my in this case, and they are independent, so it will be not d theta of x.
so yeah, so I saw that. So you see, that is nothing. You don't have to bother about g theta. You see, finally, what is happening when you are dealing with a affine equivalent estimation? What you need to check? You need to check whether your joint period f theta x1 x2 xn is same as 1 upon sigma to power n f of x1 minus mu by sigma f of xn minus mu by sigma, right? Now in this case, what was happening? Your x1, x2, xn were IID, right? So if I look at the joint PDF or joint distribution function of f theta of x1, x2, xn, it would be the product of marginal distribution of x1, x2, xn, right? Now each of xi have a same distribution function. So suppose that distribution function is g theta, right? So that means distribution function, joint distribution function f theta x1, x2, xn would be nothing but product I is equal to 1 to n product I is equal to 1 to n g theta of xi. G theta is the distribution function of one observation from uniform mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma, right? Because they are IID.
Okay, it is just a single observation.
Single. That is what I have written down. No? I am trying to write down, you see, I am trying to write down my f theta x1, x2, xn in the form of, if it is a distribution function, then it is in the form of f of x1 minus mu by sigma, f of xn minus mu by sigma. Now, since x1, x2, xn are given to be independent, their joint distribution function f theta x1, x2, xn would be same as product I is equal to 1 to n g theta of xi. That is what I have written down. Is that okay? Now,
Yes,
what is g theta of xi? G theta xi is the common distribution function of x1, x2, xn at the point xi. And what is that? 1 upon mu plus sigma minus mu minus sigma. That becomes how much? 1 by 2 sigma. So 1 by 2 sigma, indicator that xi lies between mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
That is what I have written down over. Now, indicator that xi lies between mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma can be written as indicator that xi minus mu by sigma lies between minus 1 to 1. Is that okay?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
And that is what is being read over there. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
So you have been able to write down this as f of x1 minus mu by sigma, f of xn minus mu by sigma, where f of x1, x2, xn is how much?
The product of g theta x, sir.
Yeah, no, you have to write down you have to write down this in terms of f of x1 minus mu by sigma, f of xn minus mu by sigma, and so on. G theta xi is nothing but probability that x1 or g theta of t is nothing but probability that x1 less than or equal to t under theta. X1 less than or equal to t is equivalent to saying that x1 minus mu by sigma is less than or equal to t, right? Sorry, t minus mu by sigma. X1 minus mu by sigma is less than or equal to t minus mu. But what is the distribution function of x1 minus mu by sigma? It is uniform minus 1 to 1, right? Distribution of x1 minus mu by sigma is how much? Uniform minus 1 to 1, right? Because x has uniform mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma.
Yes, sir.
So you can write down this in terms of f of x1 minus mu. So everything can be written in terms of x1 minus mu by sigma, xn minus mu by sigma. That is the whole idea. Have I been able to clarify, or I can again?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is clear.
So let me just check if I can play that video, because then I cannot speak.
I need to tell what my g theta x is. G theta x is the distribution function of uniform minus sigma to mu plus sigma. So similarly, for x less than mu minus sigma, for x between mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma, this is really what I integrate from mu minus sigma to x. So become.
Are you able to see?
X minus.
Are you
No,
able to
sir.
see now?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now you see,
Yes, sir.
I have written down this f theta x1, x2, xn as, because it is a joint distribution function of x1, x2, xn. So it is, are you able to hear me also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I have stopped
Yes.
the audio of the video and I am just speaking. So if you see this joint distribution function of, let me go back. This is a joint distribution function of x1, x2, xn. This has been written as product I is equal to 1 to n marginal of xi, right? But all xi have a same distribution function, which is g theta at the point xi. This is a marginal of xi at the point small xi. This is what it is. Now I try to see what is a g theta x. G theta x is a distribution function of uniform mu minus sigma by 2 to mu plus sigma by 2, which is clearly 0 if x is less than mu minus sigma by 2. It should be mu minus sigma by 2 actually over here, right? It would be mu minus sigma if it is mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma. So there is some typo over here, you can correct it. So in terms of the problem, it should be if 0 if x is less than mu minus sigma by 2. If x is greater than or equal to mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma, that means it is in between. Then uniform AB distribution is how much? X minus A upon B minus A.
Yes, sir.
That means x minus mu minus, again here it would be sigma by 2.
Sigma.
So I would say you change here mu minus sigma to mu plus sigma in the question. Divided by b minus a. B minus a is how much? Mu gets cancelled, sigma becomes 2 sigma. So there are some typos over here, you can correct it, right? X, right? And if x is greater than or equal to mu plus sigma, it is 1. Now you can see that all this I am trying to write down in terms of x minus mu by sigma. And that is what I am trying to do, because everything I have to write down in terms of x1 minus mu by sigma, x2 minus mu by sigma, and xn minus mu by sigma. So this is 0 if x minus mu by sigma is less than minus 1. X minus mu by sigma plus 1 if x minus mu by sigma is between minus 1 to 1. And 1 if x minus mu by sigma is greater than or equal to 1. Is that okay? Sigma by 2, you can make those typo corrections that. So that means g theta x can be written as f of x minus mu by sigma, right? And that is what I am trying to do over here. So this I have written down as h of x minus mu by sigma, right? Because everything over here has been written in terms of mu minus mu by x minus mu by sigma. Let me just go slightly back. Yeah. So see, everything I have been able to write down this as in terms of x minus mu by sigma. So what is my h of x minus mu by sigma? Where I can write down now h of x. So you can just check. H of x would be 0 if x is less than -1, right? Because the role of x has been replaced by x minus mu by sigma. And if x is between -1 to 1, then how much is this?
X plus R.
And if x is greater than or equal to 1, this is 1. So you have been able to write down g theta x as h of x minus mu by sigma.
Yes, sir.
So product g theta xi you have been able to write down as h of x1 minus mu by sigma, h of x2 minus mu by sigma, h of xn minus mu by sigma. H you have been able to write down. So now let me just go back a little slightly further. Yeah, so now I have been able to write down f theta of x1, x2, xn as product I is equal to 1 to n h of xi minus mu by sigma. Now this is my f of x1 minus mu by sigma, xn minus mu by sigma. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So I'm saying I am in the general model which I had considered. So this problem is invariant under affine group of transformation because I had seen any f theta which can be written as f of x1 minus mu by sigma, xn minus mu by sigma. It is invariant provided your loss function is invariant. And loss function here was this, which is of the type a minus mu whole square by sigma square, which is w of a minus mu by sigma, which is wt as t square. And that is what. Does that clear?
Sir,
Yeah.
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, sir. Somebody is waiting.
Somebody is waiting. Okay. Yeah, is that okay? Shall I?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other doubt?
Sir, in estimating sigma in the affine group of transformation, how are we converting the problem into a scale problem?
Which one?
Estimation of sigma to the power r in affine group of transformation.
Sigma to power r. Let me just go back to those notes. So here it is. So this is the kind of densities I am considering. I see appropriate group of transformation is GBC x1, x2, xn, which is bx1 plus c, bxn plus c. Is that okay? Because if you x1, x2, xn has this PDF, then for any constant b and c, bx1 plus c, bx2 plus c, bxn plus c would have, again, because Jacobian would become b, so it would become 1 upon b sigma to power n, t1 minus b mu plus sigma and b sigma. So again, you get the same PDF in the same family, except that sigma just gets changed to b sigma and mu gets changed to b mu plus sigma. So I see that the class of distributions under consideration are invariant under this group of transformations. Induced group of transformation on the parameter space, which is mu.
Sir, can you share your screen so that it would be understandable?
I'll do that. Can you see now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, if I consider GBC x1, x2, xn as bx1 plus c, bxn plus c. So if x1, x2, xn has this PDF, then bx1 plus c, bx2 plus c, bxn plus c, their joint distribution is again the same. because bx1 is coming, so this b would come in the diagonal throughout when I take the Jacobian. So Jacobian would become b to power n, 1 upon b to power n, which would get combined with this b sigma to power n. It would become sigma is positive, b is positive, so b sigma would also be positive. So that means sigma gets converted to b sigma. Here I am putting bx1 plus mu by sigma as y1, let us say. So x1 becomes, yeah, bx1. I'm saying that bx1 plus what is that? Bx1 plus c is equal to mu. Sorry, bx1 plus c is equal to y1. So x1 becomes y1 minus c by b. So y1 minus c by b, b gets combined with this, and then b passes on in the denominator also. So that means sigma again becomes b sigma, and mu becomes
b mu plus c.
C, f remains the same. So that means you still remain in the same family, except that sigma gets changed to b sigma and mu gets changed to b mu plus sigma. The only thing I have to make sure is my mu and range of mu and sigma remains the same. Now mu was to begin with in the whole real line. If mu is in whole real line, b mu plus sigma is whole real line. No issues. Sigma was positive, so the transform should be positive. That means b sigma should be positive, and that is why you required b to be positive. You cannot say I can take b to be whole R and then say it is invariant. It is invariant only when b is positive. Now note that if my parameter space was 0 to infinity, R mu was also belonging to 0 to infinity, then under b mu plus c the problem is not invariant, because my mu is positive, but my b mu plus c may take any value. So unless you take c to be also positive, right? So everything, group of transformations depend. You have to choose it intelligently so that my PDFs remain invariant. So that's okay. Here there is not an issue, so this remains invariant. Induced group of transformations on the parameter space is GB bar BC, which is b mu plus c and b sigma. So mu gets transformed to b mu plus sigma. So, and we have seen that G bar acts transitively on P. Why? Because there are two parameters B and C over here. Two parameters in the parameter space, mu1 and mu and sigma. So I can have a 1-1 transformation between BC and mu sigma. So that means if mu1 sigma 1 and mu2 sigma 2 are 2 points, right? I can relate them through some G bar BC, because I can choose B and C. So they act transitively. So that means the risk function of our invariant decision rule will not depend on mu and sigma. So first I consider, suppose you have to estimate sigma to power R, where R is any non-zero constant. So the first thing which you do in invariant estimation is you try to see what should be your induced group of transformation on the action space, right? Now I know that sigma has changed to B sigma. So sigma to power R would get changed to B to power R.
Sigma to the power R.
And sigma to power R was your action in the original problem. So action in the transform problem would be B to power R into A.
A.
And that is why you have considered G tilde BC to be BR sigma to power R for B greater than 0, C belonging to R. So it does not depend on C. Now I want my loss to be invariant. So L mu sigma A, L theta A should be same as L G bar BC mu sigma, G bar BC A for every theta and B positive and CR. That means L mu sigma A same as L of B mu plus C, B to power R A for this thing. I take C to be minus mu by B and A to be 1 upon sigma. Then becomes L mu sigma A as L0 A by sigma to power R for every theta belonging to R. So that means your loss function should be of the type some function of A by sigma to power R. So it should depend on mu sigma and A only through A by sigma to power R. It should not depend on mu. For some function W, now here action has to be positive because sigma is positive. So for some function defined on 0 infinity to infinity. So if my loss function is of this type, then my problem is invariant. Note that G bar acts transitively on P, because given any mu1 and mu1 sigma 1 and mu2 sigma 2, I can find B and C such that mu1 sigma 1 is same as B times mu2 plus C and C times sigma 2, right? that you can do, because you can solve that equation uniquely. My any rule will be invariant if delta GBCX is same as G delta BC delta X in the case of scale. So Bx1 plus C, Bxn plus C is same as B to power R delta X1 X2 Xn. Is that okay? That is what G delta BC.
Yes, sir.
First I take my B to be 1. Then it becomes delta of X1 plus C, Xn plus C is same as delta of X1 X2 Xn. I take C to be minus Xn. So that means delta X is a function of X1 minus Xn, Xn minus 1 minus Xn. So delta is some function of D1, D2, Dn minus 1. Is that okay? That is what I see.
Yes, sir.
Then I see what should be the condition on D1, because I have used only 1 degrees of freedom. I have taken my C to be 1. No, I have taken my B to be 1. Now I take C to be 0 and I vary B. Then B of X1, X2, Xn, B of Xn plus C should be same as B to power R delta X1, X2, Xn, because I have taken C to be 0 for each one. But my delta is of this type. So I apply B of X1 plus C, B of Xn plus C over here. So C gets cancelled when you apply in D. It becomes V of B delta 1, B delta n minus 1 is same as B to power R times delta X1, X2, Xn, which is V of D1, D2, Dn minus 1. So V of B D1, D2, Dn minus 1 should be same as B to power R, V D1, D2, Dn minus 1. So that means delta X1, X2, Xn would be same as V of D1, D2, Dn minus 1, which is same as V of B D1, D2, Dn minus 1 by B to power R. For some function V from Rn minus 1 to. And converse also hold, right? Conversely, any function of this type would be scale invariant. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, what you do is your everything is going to depend on only on D1, D2, Dn minus 1, because any invariant estimator is going to depend on D1, D2, Dn minus 1. So I look at the joint PDF of D1, D2, Dn minus 1. And that is what PDF of D1, D2, Dn minus 1 turns out to be. I integrate out the last variable T. So there should be T over here, which is missing, which turns out to be 1 upon sigma to power n minus 1 G D1 by sigma Dn minus 1 by sigma. So what is happening now? You are dealing with estimation of sigma to power R when you have a scale family, because everything should depend on D1, D2, Dn minus 1 also. So I can use the result of a scale invariant, because everything has now mu is gone. You have reduced only to a 1 parameter scale family, because your estimator has to be a function of D1, D2, Dn minus 1. And what does this D1, D2, Dn minus 1 should satisfy? It should satisfy this. V of D1, D2, Dn minus 1 should be same as 1 upon B to power R, V, B, D, or V of B, D1, B, Dn minus 1 should be same. This is exactly the same condition as when we considered 1 parameter scale family, and any scale invariant estimator should satisfy. So it looks like we are reduced to 1 parameter scale family, except that role of X1, X2, Xn has been taken by D1, D2, Dn minus 1, whose PDF is again in the scale family. So everything is same, except that role of X1, X2, Xn has been replaced by D1, D2,
D1, D2, Dn.
Dn minus 1. So same result are applicable now applied to D1, D2, Dn minus 1. So the scale invariant estimator would be this. U star delta naught D upon U star W. There I had used D1 upon Dn minus 1, D2 upon Dn minus 1, and Dn minus 1 upon, no, there I had used X1 upon Xn.
X1 upon mod, Xn2.
Now here it would be D1 upon Dn minus 1, D2 upon Dn minus 1, Dn minus 1 upon Dn minus 1, and that is what W1, W2, Wn minus 1.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay? So everything is transformed to the 1 parameter scale problem.
So when we are converting delta to B, then we can say that this problem is turned into the scale family.
Scale parameter with the roles of X1, X2, Xn being taken by D1, D2, Dn minus 1.
Okay, sir.
Right. So what you need to do is you find a scale invariant estimator based on D, right? And then you try to minimize this delta naught D, because any scale invariant estimator would be of the type delta naught D upon U star W. That is what in the earlier case you had seen. No? Any scale parameter of based on X1, X2, Xn would be delta naught of X1 upon Xn, X2 upon Xn, Xn minus 1 upon Xn, Xn upon mod of Xn. divided by, so this is what it is. Sorry, delta, there it was delta naught of any scale invariant estimator divided by a function of x1 upon xn, x2 upon xn, and xn minus 1 upon xn. That is what is happening over here. Except that in place of x1, you have a d1 minus, sorry, d1 upon dn. x1 is equal by d1, and so that is why you are getting that. So exactly the same thing. And then you do it. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. So then how do we choose delta naught? So it should be some function of
Delta naught should be any scale invariant estimator. That means it should satisfy delta naught of b d1, b x1, x2, xn is same as b to power r of delta naught of x1, x2, xn.
oh, okay, sir.
Right? Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
You see, finally, you don't have to convert into d1, d2, dn minus 1. Because any scale invariant estimator would be a function of d1, d2, dn minus 1 only.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can write down in terms of x1, x2, xn only. The only,
Yes.
the only thing you have to verify is whether it is scale invariant or not. Delta naught of bx1 plus c, bx2 plus c, bxn plus c same as b to power r times delta naught of x1 plus c, x1, x2, xn. That is all. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So for example, in the normal case, summation xi minus x bar whole square looks like a reasonable estimator for sigma square. If it is sigma to power r, then summation xi minus x bar whole square to power r by 2.
R by 2.
And this satisfies delta naught of bx1 plus c, bxn plus c same as b to power r times delta x1, x2, x. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other?
So, sir, what is the intuition behind that? Here, the whole problem converted into a scale problem only. But in the when we are estimating mu, then something like this is not happening.
Yeah. So you see, sigma normally measures the variation, right? Variation, it measures the variances. The differences between the observations would play a role, right? When you take the differences of the observations, the location does not play any role. That just vanishes. So it is the differences of the observations which should play the role. And that is what is happening over here. d1, d2, dn minus 1 are actually playing the role.
Okay.
Because you're talking about variation, sigma normally would represent the variation. That is the intuition basically.
Yes, sir. And in case of mu,
mu, you cannot get rid of the location by taking the d1, d2, dn minus 1. The all observations have to come into the picture. Exponential.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask, like in all these problems in scale invariant, location invariant, and affine invariant, when defining the problem setup, like we are for a given group action, we are assuming what will be the induced group action, and then we are identifying the form of loss function. But as per the definition, a loss function must be given, and then we get the induced group action. So, like,
so that is what I am saying. So that is the whole issue is. You can apply, you see, principle of invariance is a principle.
Yes.
If your problem satisfies this, then you should apply principle of invariance, right? And what does the principle of invariance is? That your problem should be invariant. Problem is invariant, what does that mean? First thing is there should be a group of transformations under which your family distributions are invariant, right? That is one thing. Second thing is, your loss function should also be invariant. If loss function is not invariant, that means your problem is not invariant. If problem is not invariant, certainly the principle of invariance says that you should not apply the principle of invariance, because then the things are different. For example, if you are estimating the normal variance, right? If you are estimating the normal variance, we have seen group of transformations, let us say mu and sigma both are unknown. We have seen that this problem is invariant under a affine group of transformations, Bx plus C. Is that okay? If I do that, and I consider my loss function to be A minus sigma square whole square, then the loss function is not invariant. Because we have seen for loss function to be invariant, it should be a function of a upon sigma square. A minus sigma square cannot be written as a function of a by sigma square alone, because if you try to take sigma square would go out, sigma square would remain, a by sigma square would come, but sigma square will not vanish because it will go outside. Sigma square, a by sigma square minus 1 whole square. So if your loss function is just a by a minus sigma square whole square, principle of invariance is not applicable. Principle of application invariance is applicable only if you take your loss function to be a upon sigma square minus 1 whole square. Is that okay? So if a minus sigma square by whole square is given, then you will not apply an invariance principle. But then you would try to address the problem through different way. You would say that, look, loss function a minus sigma square is same as a upon sigma square minus 1 whole square, because they differ only by sigma square, a factor sigma square to power 4. So if an estimator is better than the other estimator under one loss function, the same kind of a ordering between the estimator would hold under the different loss function, the other loss function. So then you can say, then first you will say that, look, without loss of generality, I will consider for comparing two estimators in terms of a classical risk, I'll take my loss function to be a upon sigma square minus 1 whole square. Once you have taken that, then you can apply the invariance. Is that okay? So invariance of a loss function is a part of a principle of invariance. Right? If loss function doesn't satisfy that, you have to justify, you have to consider only those loss functions which are invariant. Otherwise, you should not apply the principle of invariance. Does that answer your question to?
Like, my question was, we are fixing the induced group action, and then we are identifying the form of loss function. But but as per the definition, the loss function must be first given, and then then the induced action must be determined by if the loss function is invariant.
I have answered your question. I am saying you are given a problem. You are given a loss function, that is you are saying. And you are saying, I am identifying the loss function later on, where you are saying that loss function is given in the beginning to you. That's okay. Now you have come to me, right? Sanket has come to Professor Neeraj Misra. Look, this is my family of probability distributions. This is the loss function I want to use. Tell me a prescription. So I tell Sanket, let us look at whether problem is invariant or not. I say for problem to be invariant, first thing I see is whether probability distributions are invariant or not. Right? If they become invariant, I said, look, the first test is passed, that your probability distributions are invariant. Then I say that, look, under your problem, a loss function would be invariant only if this condition is satisfied. So what I have done is, by saying that I have not identified the loss function, I have said loss function, when satisfies this, it would be invariant, because it is if and only. So I say, let me check whether your loss function, which you are having, which you don't want to negotiate, which you don't want to compromise, or which is non-negotiable, whether it is invariant or not. So I take out a prescription, I apply a test to test whether your loss function is invariant or not. If it is invariant, then I answer to Sanket, look Sanket, your problem has a nice structure. It is invariant. So you should consider only invariant estimators. Whereas if my test, which was available to me in terms of that loss function would be invariant if and only if this happens, and test fails, then I would say, Sanket, there is some problem with your loss function if you are willing to apply the invariance. So that means it doesn't satisfy, so you should not apply the invariance. But then I apply my alternate procedure. I say, look, you are very particular about the loss function a minus sigma square to power whole square. Can't you change a little bit? Can't you make it a by sigma square minus 1 whole square? You will be just only multiplying it by sigma to power 4. And any estimator which is better in terms of the a minus sigma square whole square would be better in terms of a upon sigma square minus 1 whole square. And I try to convince him that. There is a possibility you might get convinced. I don't think, because finally I have to compare the estimators. How does a constant matter? So I say, now you can, since the two loss functions are same, then your problem becomes invariant. But your loss function is this. And then you can apply the invariance principle. Have I been able to answer you satisfactorily?
Yes, sir. So like if I choose that loss function, so in that case, my induced group action will change, right?
No, you see, loss function comes only from the group of transformations. As I said, first your P is invariant. First you have identified P is invariant, then you look at what you want to estimate. Now those transformations change your parameter. For example, in the last example we were discussing, I was interested in estimating sigma to power r, and I saw that under group of transformation G, under the transformation G, sigma gets changed to B sigma. So the thing which I am trying to estimate, sigma to power r, changes to B to power r, sigma to power r. So my transformation on the Xn space would be B to power r into A, because sigma to power r was the original thing which I was interested in estimating. Is that okay? So now, once you have identified G tilde, so G tilde is nothing but collection of all those GBCs, such that GBCA is same as B to power r into A. Now I try to see, for loss function to be invariant, what should be the condition satisfied? And I say that L theta A should be same as L G bar BC theta into GBC tilde A. So GBC tilde I have to identify in terms of where the transformation has taken my Xn2. Since I was interested in sigma to power r, estimation of sigma to power r, my Xn in the transform problem, because sigma has become B sigma, my Xn should become B to power r into the original Xn. Now I apply that to L theta A, same as L G bar BC theta, GBC tilde, which I have identified, A. And which says basically your loss function should be of the type W of A by sigma to power r. So that means your any loss function which is of this type, then only you can apply the invariance. Otherwise you cannot apply the invariance. You should not apply the invariance, because problem is not invariant, because invariance principle says that if your problem has a nice structure in terms of your set of probability distribution is invariant, your loss function is invariant, then you should apply the principle of invariance. So justification of principle of invariance relies on the fact that your problem has a nice structure. Nice structure in the terms of probability distributions being invariant, your loss function is invariant. Okay? Any other doubt you have on this? You can clear it if you still it is bugging you or bothering you.
No, sir.
You can think about it. You can write to me an email. I can, if the need be, we can fix up another one-to-one Zoom meeting. That's not an issue. Shreya, you are speaking something? I can't hear you. You have to unmute you. Yeah. You have to unmute you first. I can't hear you. So I'm asking you to unmute. Is that okay? I think I can't hear her. Can somebody tell her that I can't hear her, so I can't answer? If that is all, then let me say goodbye for today and have a nice weekend. I'll send you a Zoom link for the next tutorial. So one Wednesday anyway we'll meet at 3, and one makeup tutorial we'll see when we can hold. Right? I'll decide over it and then send you an email. Yeah. Yeah, Shreya, you wanted to speak something? No. Okay, then let me say goodbye to all of you. Okay.